Hungary came into existence when a Finno-Ugric people, known as the Magyars, began occupying the Carpathian Basin under the leadership of Arpad in 895. Between 895 and 902, the whole area of the Carpathian Basin was fully conquered by the Magyars. The Magyars continued raids throughout Central Europe until they were defeated by Otto I at the Battle of Lech. Prince Giza consolidated his authority in the region. His son Stefan conquered much of the land in Hungary and built a network of castles. Stefan was crowned by Pope Sylvester II on Christmas Day 1000, which Hungary was recognized as a Christian kingdom. Stefan solidified his power in Hungary by eliminating his rivals. He effected the conversion of Hungary to Christianity and established many monasteries. Stefan was canonized as a saint in 1083. After Stefan's death, Hungary went through a series of succession crises, but order was restored by Laszlo I. In the late 12th century, Bela III extended the kingdom and reformed the administration. In the early 13th century, Hungary was ruled by an incompetent king, Andrew II. He provoked a revolt which resulted in the Golden Bull of 1222, which was Hungary's equivalent to England's Magna Carta. The document was to reaffirm the rights of the smaller nobles and new classes against the king, and it defended the rights of the whole nation against the king by restricting the power of the crown. It gave lords the right to resist the king if he broke the conditions of the bull. The Mongols invaded Hungary in 1241 during their invasion of Europe. The Hungarian army was defeated at the Battle of Mohi. King Bela IV fled the battlefield, and then he fled the country after being pursued by the Mongols. The Mongols caused much devastation throughout Hungary by destroying settlements and burning crops, and the Hungarian population dwindled as a result. But the Mongols only briefly occupied Hungary for 1 year. King Bela ordered the construction of castles and new fortifications as a result of the Mongol invasion. The Mongols returned in 1286, but their second invasion was repelled. The last king of the Arpad dynasty, Andrew III, died childless on January 14, 1301. Charles Robert of Anjou restored royal power after a period of interregnum and was crowned King of Hungary. During Charles's reign, Hungary prospered due to his successful policies. Gold was discovered in Hungary, and large amounts of gold and silver were exported. The production of gold and silver reached 3,000 pounds annually. Charles also sealed an alliance with the Polish king Casimir the Great. He died in 1342 and was succeeded by his son Louis. Louis the Great extended his rule as far as the Adriatic Sea and occupied the kingdom of Naples. He won 2 successful wars against Venice, and he annexed their territories in the Adriatic. Louis also led successful campaigns against the Turks in 1366. Louis died without an heir, and Hungary was ruled by Sigismund, who came to the throne by marrying Louis's daughter. Sigismund promoted Hungarian political institutions. He launched crusades against the Ottomans, but they ended in failure. and Sigismund died in 1437. Matthias became king of Hungary in 1458. He was a Renaissance man because he was a successful military leader, administrator, and he was patron of the arts and learning. He built an army called the Black Army. It helped to secure victories in the Austro-Hungarian War. Matthias was considered as a just king because he protected serfs from excessive demands and abuses by the magnates. Matthias died in 1490, and Hungary went through serious political turmoil and faced the serious threat of the Ottoman Turks. In 1514, peasants launched a revolt against the nobles, but this rebellion was crushed. The Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent marched an army northwards into Hungary. The Hungarians met them at the Battle of Mohacs on August 29, 1526. The Ottomans crushed the Hungarian army. The Ottomans conquered central Hungary. There were two claimants to the throne of Hungary, Ferdinand of Habsburg and Janos. Ferdinand took over western Hungary, and the country was divided into three parts. Hungary was affected by the Reformation like the rest of Europe. In the 1540s, Protestant doctrines gained many followers in Hungary. In the early 17th century, the Catholic Counter-Reformation won many converts in Hungary. At the end of the 17th century, the power of the Ottomans was waning. They have lost most of their territories. In 1699, the Habsburgs gained Hungary from the Ottoman Turks. However, the Hungarians resented the Habsburgs, so they launched a rebellion against them. The Habsburg military defeated the Hungarians at the Battle of Trencsén in 1708. In 1711, the Hungarians accepted the Peace of Szatmár, and the Austrian Emperor agreed to respect the rights of the Hungarian nation. Nationalism was growing in Hungary. By the end of the 18th century, there was a huge focus on the Magyar language. The period between 1825 and 1848 was an age of reform. The Hungarian Diet carried out a number of economic reforms, and industry began to develop in Hungary. On March 15, 1848, mass demonstrations enabled Hungarian reformers to push through a list of 12 demands. The Hungarian Diet took advantage of the revolutions of 1848 to enact the April Laws. The Habsburg Emperor Ferdinand was forced to accept the Hungarian demands due to the revolutions in Hungary and in Austria. However, the new emperor Franz Joseph rejected the reforms and sent an army against the Hungarians. The Austrian army was defeated at Bakazd. The Hungarians declared independence in 1849, but unfortunately the Austrians, with the help of the Russians, defeated the Hungarians. After suffering humiliating military defeats, Franz Joseph decided to accept internal reforms, and he made a deal with Hungary, known as the Austro-Hungarian Compromise of 1867, thus creating the dual monarchy Austria-Hungary. The two countries were governed by two separate parliaments, with a common monarch, and they shared foreign policy. The economy of Hungary grew rapidly during this time period, but Hungary was still mainly an agricultural country. After the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914, Hungary became involved in the First World War. since it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In the fall of 1918, with the war lost, the economy plummeted. There were strikes in factories, and uprisings in the army became common. In October 1918, the union between Austria and Hungary was dissolved, and the monarchy collapsed. Mihaly Károlyi became Prime Minister of Hungary on October 31st, 1918. On March 21st, 1919, Béla Kun, the leader of Hungary's Communist Party, formed the Hungarian Soviet Republic. The communist government nationalized industry and land. Hungary quarreled with Czechoslovakia and Romania. The Romanians marched into Hungary, and the communist regime collapsed. A former admiral named Miklos Horthy restored order and was elected regent. On June 4th, 1920, Hungary was forced to sign the Treaty of Trianon, which required Hungary to surrender 2/3 of its pre-war territories. Unfortunately, between the 1920s and 1930s, Horthy's rule was characterized by resentment of the loss of territories. In the 1930s, Hungary came under the influence of Nazi Germany, and the Hungarian Socialist Party was founded in 1937. When the Nazis occupied Czechoslovakia in 1939, Hungary regained some of its territory. In November 1940, Hungary joined the Tripartite Pact. Hungary regained more territory after the Nazis invaded Yugoslavia. However, after the Nazis suffered defeat at Stalingrad and Kursk, the Hungarian government sought to leave the war. Hitler planned Operation Margaret, the military occupation of Hungary. The Nazis marched into Hungary on March 19, 1944, and they installed a right-wing government. Many Hungarian Jews were deported and most died in concentration camps. In April 1944, the Allies began bombing Hungarian cities. With the Nazis losing the war, Horthy negotiated an armistice with the Soviet Union, which was announced by radio on October 15, 1944. The Nazis, however, deposed Horthy and replaced him with Zalasi Finrik. The Soviets captured the capital city, Budapest, on February 13, 1945. The fighting ended in Hungary, but the country suffered heavy losses as a result of the war. A new provisional government was created in Hungary. Between 1947 and 1949, the communists consolidate power in Hungary. The communist regime nationalized industry, and the churches and schools were taken over by the state. There were divisions within the Communist Party. Members were imprisoned or executed. Emry Nagy came to power after Rakolski fell. He introduced what he called a new course. Nagy reduced the investment in heavy industry and ended the forced collectivization of farms. Under Nagy, the Hungarian people were allowed a little more freedom, but unfortunately Nagy fell from power in 1955. Popular discontent began to boil in Hungary. Many demanded independence from Moscow and free elections. On October 23, 1956, a demonstration was held in Budapest. The secret police fired at them, which caused further unrest. Emry Nagy was reinstated as prime minister, and he attempted to cooperate with the demonstrators. The Soviets began to withdraw from Budapest, but they regrouped in the countryside and awaited reinforcements. On November 4th, the Soviets crushed the uprising. In the 1960s, Janos Kadar began a process of gradual and limited reform. Kadar introduced new economic reforms. As a result of the reforms, Hungary became prosperous. But unfortunately, the 1980s, Hungary began to suffer from inflation and had a huge foreign debt. Kadar fell from power as conditions deteriorated and as poverty became widespread. Wave of discontent and demands for reform grew in Hungary. There were reformers even within the Communist Party. In October 1989, the Hungarian Communist Party changed its policies. On October 23rd, the Constitution was amended to allow for a smooth transition to democracy. The Hungarians managed the transition to freedom peacefully. In 1990, the first free elections were held. The Socialists returned to power in 1994, and Hungary suffered an economic crisis. In 1999, Hungary joined NATO. Hungary's economy was growing throughout the 21st century, but it slowed from 2007, and in 2009, Hungary suffered the recession. But its economy soon recovered, and its economy is still growing. Today, Hungary is one of the most prosperous countries in Europe.